to declare a national emergency if no deal is reached. This is outnumbered overtime. I'm Harris Faulkner. Let's go to the live look. We're awaiting President Trump now and Vice President Pence to arrive on Capitol Hill to meet with Republican senators. We know that he has just wrapped up a signing of a bill inside the White House and is set to leave shortly ahead of his third meeting with 8 congressional leaders at the White House. This is aimed at ending the partial government shutdown now in its 19th day, but not before the president said he has the power to declare a national emergency over the wall. Watch.
Might work a deal, and if we don't, I may go that route. I have the absolute right to do national emergency if I want.
What's your threshold for when you might make a deal?
My threshold will be if I can't make a deal with people that are unreasonable.
And so I can say, too, DHS Secretary Nielsen has arrived on Capitol Hill. The play-by-play as we get it from Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel. A lot of activity right where you are.
Harris, no question about that. Good afternoon to you. Ahead of that Senate Republican luncheon, President Trump made clear he's interested in tackling a wide range of immigration issues. Take a listen.
I would love to see a big immigration bill where we really take care of the situation. I know you want to. Everybody wants to. Who wouldn't want to? Right now we have a problem. We have to take care of this, and it's quicker and easier to do this individually. But we would like to see real immigration reform in this country because we need it.
A key Senate Republican says so much of the showdown is personal.
No fair-minded person believes we will ever be able to secure that border without physical barriers in some form or fashion. And that's a fact. You can write that down, take it home to mama. And Mrs. Pelosi just refuses to admit the obvious because of her hatred of President Trump.
The day after giving the Democrats' response to the president, Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senator Chuck Schumer did an event with furloughed federal workers. They're hoping pressure will force the GOP to cut a deal.
My message to President Trump and my Republican colleagues in Congress is simple. Our federal workers just want to do their job. It's time that you do yours.
House side of the Capitol, Democrats are putting individual government funding bills on the floor, starting with Finance Today to fund, for example, the IRS. Tomorrow, they're planning to vote on funding for agriculture and housing and urban development. Democrats say after passing those bills, lawmakers can continue discussions about border security.
The obvious exit here, if the White House will come to the table and be responsible, is to reopen government, pass regular funding bills, as the Republican Senate has.
The Republican concern is if you pass all those bills, Democrats still will not be interested in border security money. Harris?
Mike Emanuel, thank you very much. Republican Congressman Louis Gohmert of Texas is here with me now, where President Trump will tour the border tomorrow in your state, but he's coming to the Capitol in the next few minutes. You and I may inherit that breaking news together, and we'll handle it as it comes. First of all, your comments on where we are after the president's address last night with being able to make a deal to open the government and get a wall.
Well, it's an extraordinary time. Historically speaking, we haven't seen this kind of hatred for a president and refusal to do what's good for a country since John Quincy Adams. Even back then as now, even though they know something's good for the country because they have walls themselves, they have gated communities, and yet they will not allow that for America. They will not allow us to help save American lives just because of their contempt for this president. It's outrageous. And have you ever remembered a time in American history when, with a shutdown going on, that one party leader would take off on vacation to Hawaii? I mean, that's such arrogance as well as contempt. It's extraordinary time. They've said they're not negotiating. They are not going to give a wall. So,
I need to step in. You and I are about to handle this together. I want to get your thoughts as the President of the United States arrives on Capitol Hill to talk about the wall and reopening the government. What is about to happen? What do you think we'll begin to hear and see that's been different?
Well, my hope is that you're going to have a speaker and a leader in the Senate that realize they are starting to be politically hurt by what they're doing and what they're denying to America. That's only when we're going to finally get some kind of agreement here, because so far they've just taken the position wall is not an option, fence is not an option, we're not letting you have any barrier. But Mo Brooks, I found, had already filed a bill when I got ready to file one that says basically let's pay the people who are currently essential and are working, TSA, the FAA, those that are working, for heaven's sake, let's get them paid. And I think that the pressure will mount to pass such a bill so that we can take care of those if Pelosi and Schumer continue to not allow any kind of barrier at our border.
You know what? I'm hearing from you compromise. You're saying Mo Brooks floated this. You would float the same thing. And we got word, Fox News was advised of a revamped schedule for the House to pass individual spending bills. Financial services today. Agriculture, transportation, housing tomorrow. Interior on Friday. Before I ask you the question, President Trump is about to ascend the steps there on Capitol Hill. And as you were talking with me, we want to draw our attention to what's about to happen now. And if there's a way to listen to the president as he is making some comments, we'll take you there. But for right now, we are watching this unfold. So my question for you is, do you get those bills done in the House and then reopen?
Not if there's no wall funding. The president's made that clear. We've made that clear. We have a veto-proof majority or margin in the House and Senate. They're going to have to provide some type of barrier the way President Obama has around his house. We need that for at least part of our border. And if they're not going to do that, the government, the partial government shutdown, is not going to stop.
So Mo Brooks out of Alabama puts this forth, and you've got your colleagues there. And what is the talk now? Are there any defections? Because we're seeing some movement among Republicans in the Senate, Lisa Murkowski now joining them, that they might vote with Democrats to reopen the government without the wall funding yet and talk about it later.
Yeah, my understanding is they don't have the votes in the Senate, and the leader, McConnell, is not going to bring the bill to the floor without them having the votes to pass it. And even if they did, we should have a veto-proof margin in both the House and Senate. So there were, 6, 7 House members or Republicans that voted for a bill last week. So you have some, but it's not enough to get the government open. So we ought to at least pay those who are working now.
Excuse me, the President of the United States, the Vice President, they're walking in for this GOP policy lunch. This is their third gathering of lawmakers with the President to talk about the issue of wall funding.
That's a big deal. They're coming to us. That's a big deal.
All right, let's listen to the president.
I think we're going to win. But we need border security. Very simple.
How long do you want to let this shutdown last, Mr. President?
Whatever it takes.
Mr. President, Leader Schumer and Leader Pelosi are saying this is a manufactured crisis. They are basically accusing you of lying about the border.
Well, what you should do is take a look at last night and see the results this morning. The people know we need border security. Thank you very much.
And I want to thank Congressman Gohmert of the great state of Texas. He has left us, but he'll definitely come back, and I'll talk with him at another time. His last words to us before the president and the vice president walked up, and we heard from President Trump, from Congressman Gohmert, he said this is a big deal that he's coming to us on the Hill. This is a big deal at this juncture. So the importance, and then you hear the president saying, we need border policy. I haven't heard too many different things from recent Democrats I've had on this very program. Congressman Dan Kildee of Michigan saying it's a three-pronged approach. And do you know he mentioned the word barrier before he mentioned technology and people? I want to bring in California Congressman Eric Swalwell. Let's talk brass tacks as a Democrat getting this done. Some in your party, Congressman, and I mentioned Kildee from Michigan, are ready to do a deal. What is the sticking point? Is it your leadership?
No, the sticking point is whether we will be governed by facts or whether we're going to be governed by fear. And if we follow the facts show us that, yes, we do have undocumented individuals coming across our border, but there's a net outflow of undocumented individuals leaving our country. So let's increase Border Patrol agents. Let's deploy technology. Let's put fencing and barriers where vulnerabilities are needed. But a sea to shining sea wall, as the president promised Mexico would pay for, that's never going to happen.
That campaign rhetoric has not been such in this conversation. It has been a wall system.
He used the word wall, I think, 4 or 5 times last time.
But it's been a wall system for months. And the president has talked about people and technology. But let's be honest about those people. The Border Patrol right now has 2,000 openings. The government, the federal government, has a retention problem with Border Patrol agents.
And that retention problem is going to get a lot worse when they're not getting paid and their credit ratings are in the tank, and they're not paying their rent or their mortgages.
My
that doesn't help us.
That the issue of trying to pay people and retain them in the Border Patrol has been across several presidents. It's not just now. So these issues of more people. Well, yeah, the Academy is accepting more people, but then you have to keep the ones you have now. So,
I agree.
Right, so there's that part. Representative Will Hurd today, a Republican out of Texas, but I hear sometimes you guys saying the same things. The semantics are the deal. Can you just make a deal? You know barriers are part of it. 3-pronged. Kildee told me yesterday. Barrier, technology, and we got to solve the retention people problem.
Harris, there's only one person who is truly the problem, and that is the president, who backed away from the deal that passed in the Senate when Mitch McConnell had Republicans and Democrats support what we just passed in the House. So I think you have to isolate what the problem is and not have this equivalence here where we're treated the same way as the president. The momentum is with the people who want to fund border security, not have border theater.
Can I ask you to tell me whether or not you really think Democrats will get on board after you pass all those other bills? Because now we've seen the schedule that's come out. It's potential that you could get some of those appropriations. But the question has always been, will you really fight it out and come up with something that benefits everybody in the end if the shutdown and those bills go away?
Well, Harris, it's a great question. I think what you'll see is bipartisan votes to reopen government. We saw that before the shutdown, and we will see that now in the shutdown. What you will not see is bipartisan votes to have a wall. So, again, if you're looking for where is the bipartisanship, it's to have smart border security, but not to have the wall as the president is described.
It's not a concrete wall. It's a steel slat system.
He should stop using that phrase then.
And a reinforced situation like a fence line, that a lot of that needs restoring along those 600 miles. What would you have going forward? You want to tear all that down and start all over again? No, the barriers work in some places.
Harris, the president is the problem here. He is truly the problem. He cannot articulate for us where he wants a wall. He just blanketly says, we need a wall. He has backed away from a deal that has already been struck. And I really, actually, if we just step back for a second, the president should not be going to the border. He should cross the border and go to these Central American countries where migrants are fleeing violence and economic hardship, so that we can understand what can we do so that they stay in their countries because they're not afraid for their lives. How can we have a Marshall Plan with Central America and Mexico so that we can make investments there so we're not having to build higher and higher walls on our border?
And as you call for him to cross the border, there might be some who would call for you to read the 2006 legislation that was passed when Democrats had the majority that called for wall funding, strong fence line, whatever you want to do it, and we can change the semantics and the topics of things, but we don't have to change the substance. I'm optimistic that you guys can do it, men and women on the Hill, and not make it about one person, but make it about everybody.
But you're giving equivalence again to him, Harris, where we had Mitch McConnell, Republicans, Democrats in the Senate. The majority of the members now in the House are voting for it. He is the one who's isolated. So you have to make it about him because he's the problem. And I hate saying that because he's the president of the United States, but he is the problem here.
All right. Congressman Swalwell, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks, Harris.
All right.